Okay, for those of you who have just joined, we are doing a quick poll to understand what your experience is. So what you can do is take out your phone, scan the QR code, and you can let us know what your experience is. Have you ever participated in the budget before? If yes, you can say yes. If no, you can say no. Okay, so more or less it is 50-50, right? So what I would expect is for those people who have already participated in the budget cycle before, so you might find the first 20 minutes of the session slightly elementary, slightly repetitive. So please bear with me for the next maybe 20 minutes, especially for people who have already participated in the budget cycle. However, once we get to the main core of the webinar, I'm sure you will learn some new things there as well. Also, you can share your experience of participating in the budget. How is that different from what we are discussing here? Okay. So with that, we will get started. Let me bring on the slides. Okay. So more people are joining in. So let me go and start the webinar. Okay. Before we do the webinar, we usually do a quick round of introduction. So I'll quickly introduce myself. I have been working in. Okay, I think there was a disconnection or a mic issue now. I think you should be able to hear me. So I've been working in finance and FP&A for over 15 years now. I started working in audit back in 2010, and over the last 15 years, I've worked across these different organizations, including Citi, Pfizer. Most recently, I was the A lead for the APAC and India region for FP&A at Coursera. That was back in 2023 when I left that role, and then we started FP&A Professional Institute, which is an educational institution solely focused on FP&A and finance education. Okay. I've had the opportunity over the last 3 years to meet top FP&A experts across the globe, right from North America to Europe to Middle East, and whatever I do through FP&A Professional Institute and through all of our content, which could be, you must have come across our books, podcasts, YouTube videos, everything that we do, we try to bring in all that experience, not just our experience, but the experience of the top FP&A experts, experience of people who have already worked and got to the CFO level, and try to bring that all of that in our materials, which could be books, courses, certifications, podcasts. So that was a quick introduction about me and a quick introduction about a professional institute. So we've been training over the last 3 years, as I mentioned. However, we started this as a side hustle on teaching on Saturdays, Sundays with our full-time jobs back in 2022. I did that for 1 year and then figured out, okay, this is something that we really enjoy and we should make this a full-time career. And that's how me and Dhawal, my co-founder, who is not here today, we started and incorporated the FP&A Professional Institute. And over the last 3 years in the institute, we have trained more than roughly 4,500 students across all of these courses that you see. And the two most popular programs are the FP&A Masterclass and the Certified Global Professional. This is what the institute has been doing over the last 3 years. Okay, so with that now being covered, I will now get into the webinar topic. So we already conducted this poll. I'll just quickly share the results for people who joined in early. I think for people who joined in, we did this poll, and more or less half of you have attended or participated in the budget before, and half of you have not. So based on that, we will conduct this session. Okay. So what are we going to cover in this webinar? So in the next 1 hour or so, 60 minutes or so, what we'll be talking about is, first, we'll understand what is budgeting and why budgeting is important, which is going to be slightly elementary for people who have already worked on budgets before. So that will be out of the way in the first 5 to 10 minutes. And then we'll get into the budget cycle, which is the three important phases of an annual operating plan or a budget, which is the planning stage, the execution stage, and the review and the consolidation stage. So these are the three steps we will look at one by one, looking at real life like examples, I would say, and we'll then take questions on this topic. Okay. So right now I have muted everybody who's entering the webinar. However, if you have questions or if you have any doubts in between the webinar, you can put that in the chat box. I will be monitoring the chat box on in between the slides, and we'll take questions if they are relevant to the topic. If they are not, I will be addressing all of those questions at the end. If you are having questions, you can put them in the chat box, and then I'll take those questions in the between if they are relevant to the topic. If not, we'll take it at the end. And at the end, you will get an opportunity to unmute yourself and ask your doubt or question if you want to do that as well. Okay, so that is how we will be operating in the next 60 minutes. Okay, so let me quickly start with the FP&A team. What does FP&A team do? So if I have to define or if I have to explain to a outsider what does FP&A team does in one sentence, I would be most likely be making one of these two statements. Okay, the first statement would be FP&A teams act as a bridge between the business teams and the function teams that you see on the left hand side. On the side, it could be sales, marketing, product, engineering, HR, operations, all the business teams, all the functional teams, and the senior leadership or the senior management, which is the CEO and the one level below CEO, which could be CFO, head of sales, head of marketing. Okay, so what FP&A team does is it acts as a bridge between the two. In most of the FP&A functions, if you realize, you will be collecting inputs or data from the business and the functional teams and then presenting that to the senior management for the purpose of decision making. So that is the first important definition of FP&A. And the second definition and the second way usually people define is FP&A team is the team that usually decides where the next dollar the company will invest in the upcoming quarter, in the upcoming year. So that is what the entire budgeting process is about. It is the FP&A team who helps the senior management decide that where the company will be investing their resources in the upcoming quarter, in the upcoming year. And all of that process is handled through the annual operating plan or the budget cycle. So that's a little background about FP&A. These are the four key functions 80% of the time if people will be performing. So budgeting, we'll talk about budgeting cycle in detail today. Forecasting, so once a budget is prepared, it's not done. You still keep tracking the numbers on a very close basis and make sure that the senior management is updated on the most recent updated forecast or most recent updated projection of what is going to what is the next month or the next quarter going to look like. So that is what forecasting is. Then there is management reporting, which includes your profitability analysis and variance analysis. Variance analysis is you compare your actual performance versus your budget or your forecast and figure out what went right, what went wrong, and what could you do next to prevent what went wrong, what could you continue doing, what went right. That entire process is the variance analysis part of the management reporting process. And then you have profitability analysis. FP&A team is also responsible to figure out how profitable the organization is, not just as a whole, but department wise, product wise, customer wise. So it is not only important for you to be profitable as an organization. You need to know where the profitability is coming from. If there are certain departments which are not performing well, what should you be doing to address that? All of those areas are covered in the profitability analysis. I'll take a quick pause, see if there are any questions in the chat box. If not, we will go into the budget cycle, which is the main agenda for today. Okay. Before that, quickly, I'll just run through the monthly calendar. So this is how a FP&A monthly calendar looks like if you are working in an FP&A role. You will typically spend the the first week of the month, which is usually the first 7 days of the calendar month, doing reporting, doing reports like flash reports, management reports, month-end reports, till the time books of accounts are closed. Once the books of accounts are till the time books of accounts are closed, you would be doing some sort of an estimate reporting, which could be flash reporting. And then once the numbers are closed, you would be doing the actuals reporting, which is the month-end report, or it could be any specific report that your stakeholders are expecting from you. It could be the headcount report for the HR team, it could be the sales report for the sales team, it could be marketing analysis, ROI analysis for the marketing team. So depending on which stakeholder you work with, you would be preparing a lot of reporting in the first week. In today's day and age, most of these reports are likely automated. So your role here is more of analysis, understanding, providing your comments, providing your insights of what has happened in the previous month. So that is how the week one of FP&A looks like. So can anybody guess what will the week two of FP&A be? What would be the FP&A teams doing in week two? Looking at the chat box, if you can guess. Okay, so once the actual reporting is done, when you close the books and you are done with the management reports for the during the first week, then you move to forecasting. Okay, Puneet is saying management reporting, acting on the variance. Yeah, so acting on the variance will happen. So acting on the variance will be jointly done by the team in collaboration with the business team. So action will be taken most likely by the business team. FP&A team is responsible for making sure that the communication happens and they are tracking that the action is being taken. So that definitely happen throughout the month. So what happens next in most organizations is that you move on to the forecast cycle. You take your last month forecast, you update that, you reach out to the business teams, ask them for any updates to the assumptions that you had previously done in the previous forecast, and then you update your version of the forecast. And at the end of this week, you will have a new version of the forecast. And most companies update the forecast either on a quarterly basis or on a monthly basis. So if you're doing it on a quarterly basis, this will come only once a quarter. If you're doing it on a monthly basis, you might be doing this on a regular monthly. So you'd be picking up the last month forecast which you had prepared in the last month, week two, and then you would look at that forecast again, actualize the first previous month which you just closed last week. So update the actual numbers, then look at the assumptions for the remaining period, and then look at the whatever changes are required, get those changes done, get that reviewed from the business teams, and then close the or lock the forecast, which would be used for the reporting period comparison in the next month. Okay, so whatever the forecast you close here, it'll act as a stick or it act as a yardstick to compare your next month's actual performance. Okay, and you would then try to figure out, or you would try to see what went wrong or what went right in your actuals from what you had forecasted a month or a week back or a few weeks back. So that is the week two of forecasting. Okay, week three is more of so once you're done with your management reporting, closing the books, forecast updates, then week three is slightly ad hoc. You do ad hoc analysis. There are in other projects that you might be involved in. Usually, when you are working in FP&A, you are most likely be involved in one or two projects that are ongoing projects. So this is a time where you will get more time to devote to those projects. And some teams, most teams would also try to automate their existing processes, try to be more efficient in their and close, try to be more efficient in their forecast for the next cycle. So try to automate a lot of things. And then once you have submitted the forecast, doesn't mean that you don't have to look at it again till the next cycle. You will still keep an eye on the forecast. And if there are any major risks or any major opportunities, meaning the numbers that you have submitted in the week two, if there are any major items that could be a risk to that forecast, or that could be opportunity which was missed or which was found out later after the forecast was closed, you may want to just highlight those top items or the main key material items to the senior management, so they don't figure that out in the next forecast cycle. They know it right away, and if any decision action needs to be taken, that can be taken right away. So this is how week three looks like. And again, week four is preparation for week one. You again start doing the flash reports and then prepare for the next month end close. And this cycle continues. And this is typically what you see in most FP&A teams. There might be some teams who might be new, meaning they've just recently set up the FP&A process, especially in a startup environment. Okay, in that case, you might be seeing week one activities happening in week two or week three, and week two activities happening week three, week four. So that is natural if the FP&A team is recently set up. However, over the period of 1 or 2 years, or maybe two or three budget cycles, you would see the FP&A team maturing and more or less settle to this calendar. If the FP&A team has been there for 20 years and super efficient, then you might be seeing some activities that happen in week two and week one as well. That could also be the, but this is more or less an average FP&A monthly calendar. Okay. So wanted to share that before we get into the budget process, because you don't see any budgeting related items in this weekly or the monthly calendar that we just looked at. It is because that budgeting is a one-time activity. It is not a monthly or a quarterly activity. So that's the reason you don't see that in your monthly calendar. Okay. So apart from this, budgeting is another key activity or the another key project that the team takes on during, and most likely it happens before the end of the next financial year. So in case your accounting year or the financial year is January to December, most FP&A teams or most companies would prepare their budget somewhere between the August to November period, just 2-3 months before the year ends, and so that they can have the budgets ready before the new year begins. Okay. So I'll not get into what is budgeting. I believe that is straightforward. Most companies would want to materialize whatever their senior management vision is there for the long term into reality, and budgeting is proven to be the best way to do that. So converting your long-term goals, say for example, you have a huge vision for next 5 years, okay, that can only materialize if you work towards it step by step, year by year. If you want to achieve something big, for example, if you want to double your turnover in 5 years, you will have to plan how do you go about it in the next immediate year. How do you go about it in year 2, year 3, year 4? And that's how you would eventually achieve your long-term vision. Okay, so it is converting your long-term vision into an actionable annual business plan. That is what the annual budgeting process is. A lot of companies call it in different ways. Some companies call it budget, some companies call it plan, targets, commitments, so different terminologies are used. However, it is the same budget or the plan. It is one and the same thing. Okay, we already covered this. Now, before we get into the budget cycle, are there any questions for whatever you have covered so far? So we talked about the introduction to what FP&A team does. Then we talked about the FP&A calendar, and finally we talked about what is a budget. So are there any questions, any comments on whatever we have covered so far? If not, we can get into the main topic for today, which is the budget cycle. I'll give it maybe 20 seconds, see if there is anything in the chat box, and then come back to the slide. Okay, I don't see any comments or questions in the chat box. So let me continue and we can take again questions at an appropriate time. So now budgeting cycle is divided into 3 phases. You must have seen it on the event or the webinar poster. So it is planning, execution, and consolidation and review. So each of these stage, we will look at it step by step. And for those people who had voted in the webinar earlier that they have been a part of the budget cycle, they can let us know if this is something that is consistent with what they have seen, or they've seen something different, so that we can also learn. Okay, so let me go into the first stage, the planning stage, and then we'll again take a quick break, see if there are questions after the planning stage as well. Okay, so let's talk about the planning stage. Okay, so now planning stage usually involves two important steps, and we'll talk about both the steps one by one. The first step is the development of budget guidelines. Think about this as preparing the rules of the game before you are playing any particular sport. Okay, so if you're playing any particular sport, you will usually have certain rules and regulations that all the players, all the team members need to follow, so that you are able to conduct the game in a fair and a reasonable manner. Okay, so think about it like that. And before starting a project which is going to impact the entire organization, usually there is participation from each and every organization, each and every department in the organization in the budget process. They would be either giving you data or they will be giving you inputs for the preparation of the budget. So it's I would say it is a multi team project or a cross-functional project where you would have interaction with many people in the organization. So it is important that you have certain defined rules and guidelines so that everybody who is participating in the budgeting process exactly knows what to expect, and everybody follows the rules, and the entire process that gets done in a more systematic way and in the fastest possible and in the best possible way. Okay, so that is what the budget guidelines usually do. Okay, I'll now give you some examples of budget guidelines that I have seen in my experience. These are not This is not an exhaustive list. These are just some examples from whatever I could think are more common ones I am bringing out. However, this can be anything that you think is required to be set as a rule before the game begins or before the budgeting process begins. Okay, so I'll give you some examples, but keep in mind these are not exhaustive examples. You could have another 25 or hundreds of other guidelines very specific to your industry, very specific to your company as well. Okay, so in one of the companies that I work with, and I think most of the companies I work with, in fact, usually we make sure that the budgets are submitted by everybody. When we are circulating the templates for the budget, we make sure that the teams who are going to submit the data, it could be your business teams, it could be your functional teams. They are submitting that data in a set format or in a template that you have decided as a finance or FP&A team. You cannot let the business teams and finance or business teams and the functional teams submit the data in whatever format they want to. Okay. The reason being, irrespective of whether you're consolidating it in an Excel file or whether you're consolidating using a budget planning tool, irrespective of that, you would need that data to come in a certain format so that it is easier for you to consolidate later on and then review it. Okay. So if you don't do this, you will get into a lot of trouble. Uh, every team or every department will be sending you data in different formats, and you might spend a lot of time and effort just making sure that all the data is in one particular format so that you could upload it in the tool or you could consolidate it in an Excel file. Okay. So good amount of time is spent before the budget process begins during the planning stage, which we are looking at right now, to make sure that you prepare the templates and also test those templates, and then you share those templates to the business teams. Make sure that they submit the data or the inputs in that particular format. That could be a example of a budget guideline. Okay. Another example that you could I have come across is any and this is a concept called incremental budgeting. So when you are basing your next year budget on your previous year actual number or your previous year budget number, a lot of companies do that. Okay. They tell you, okay, your next year budget should be plus or minus 5% or plus 5%. In case of expenses, it might be minus if they have a expense reduction target. In most cases, it will be your next year budget is, it cannot be more than 5% from the previous year budget. And if you want more than 5% of more than 5% than the previous year budget, okay, then you have to give me detailed justification or give me detailed reasoning for why you need that extra money, which is more than the normal increment. Okay, that could be another budget guideline. Okay, I'll not go into every guideline in detail. I'll just quickly run through it. Okay, any adjustments after the budget must be submitted. Any adjustments to the budget after submission. So, say for example, they have submitted they have input, they have updated the template, the teams, they've submitted the templates, and then they come back and tell you, okay, we want to make a change. Okay, imagine you're working with 25 different departments, and each and every department comes every other day after the submission and tells you that we want to make a change. Okay, it'll become very difficult for the finance team to manage. Okay, so one of the guidelines could be any adjustments that you want to do after you submit the template, that has to be approved by somebody in the company so that nobody takes advantage of making changes frequently and they submit it well or they submit it rightly in the first place only. However, you cannot also restrict, you cannot make any that also you. So what you could do is you could make it slightly difficult for the teams to make changes so that they submit the right inputs or the correct inputs or the best inputs in their first submission. Okay. Again, I'm reminding these are all guidelines. None of this is a rule or none of this is something that you have to put it in your company guidelines. Your company guidelines could be totally different. I'm just sharing my experience, whatever I have seen in my working on 5 or 6 budget cycles that I have. Okay. Departments must submit a formal budget request for budget adjustments with justification. Again, an example of a budget guideline. I'll not go into each of them in detail, but if you want me to cover any of them in detail, you let me know. Okay, ensure the phasing of the expenses is right. Okay, once a quarter is over, any unused budget will be sent back to the corporate. Okay, these are some examples of guidelines. Typically, what happens, you figure out as you do more budget cycles what went wrong in the previous budget cycle. If you figure out there were like 1 or 2 things that could have been done better in the next in the budget cycle and that could have helped you, you usually add that as a budget guideline in many cases. Okay, so based on your previous experience of working on the budget, you do a thorough review. Okay, what happened, what went right, what went wrong, and then most likely you would add a budget guideline so that you don't repeat the same mistake or you don't do the same mistake again in the next budget cycle. Okay, so there's a comment in my DM. I'll just take that. What shall be done if the budget is being prepared for the first time in the company? Okay, so when you're doing the budget for the first time in the company, then you don't have any previous year data, right? So then you cannot do incremental budgeting. So then you'll have to create the budget assuming that there is no past data. So there's something called as zero-based budgeting, which basically is that you go to each and every line item and you build that budget from scratch. It will take more time. However, if you don't have any past data, then definitely you will have to build that budget from scratch. Yeah, you can use zero-based budgeting. Okay. So comment from Shri, a budget guideline target corporate reduction like 5%. Yeah, that could be a budget, and it's a common budget guideline. Most companies want to cut costs, so they would typically have this type of a guideline if they're looking to cut costs. Okay, so 5% reduction in operating expenses. Also, not just for cutting costs, it could also to improve efficiency. There might be a lot of inefficiency in your existing processes, and senior management must have identified that and then told you, okay, so many inefficiencies are there, so many people are doing the same thing, or we are taking too much time for this entire process. We could automate this, okay, and all of this can result in 5% efficiency, and they could just tell you, okay, you have to figure out 5% efficiency. Okay. Another comment, once we have actuals for 2 to 3 months and some orders are pushed out or pushed back, should we adjust the forecast or can we put it as notes? Okay, once you have actuals for two and some orders are pushed back, should we adjust the forecast? Okay, so it now depends on the materiality of those orders. Okay, so if those orders are material orders, say if those orders are 20% of your revenue, then you definitely have to adjust and highlight that in the forecast. If those orders are small ones, like it's less than 2% of the revenue, then you can wait till the next forecast cycle and then update it. So you definitely have to update that in the forecast, but it depends on how material they are. If they are material ones, then you have to flag them immediately as a risk and opportunity, as a risk which we or an opportunity, whatever the case may be, as we had seen in the monthly budget calendar. However, if it is not that material, you can then wait till the next forecast cycle and then update it in the forecast. Okay. All right. So we'll come back. So you looked at some budget for people who participated in the budgets. I wanted to just check if you've seen any other budget guidelines. Just take the OPEX one, right? 5% reduction in OPEX. Any other budget guidelines that you've seen? Okay. All right. So we'll move on to the next section in that case. We talked about the budget guidelines, which is the planning stage. Now we go to the second part of the planning stage, which is the preparation of budget calendar and templates. So in the budget guidelines, we discussed about the templates, but we will look at how you plan for it in detail. So think about budget like an important life event. So can you tell me what are some of the important life events? So can you just note or maybe put it in the chat box, like what are important life events for us as human beings? Okay, we can put it in the chat box and maybe we can pick one of them as an example. Yes. So we are recording this session. We will share the recording for those of you who have commented for the recording. We'll definitely share the recording. Okay. So Ehsanul is saying wedding. Okay. What else? Okay. So let's take example of, okay, preschool, graduation, wedding, parentship. Okay. So either of, take any example. Let's take the example of the wedding. Okay, so which is the first one in the chat box. Okay, so when you have an important life event, you just don't go ahead and say that, okay, after 2 days I'll be or we'll be doing the wedding. Okay, so you typically plan for it ahead of time. In most cases, you would want to plan for it 3 months ahead. Okay, you would say, okay, it is July right now, let's plan for the wedding in October, and we get 3 months. And during those 3 months, what we'll do is we'll figure out, okay, first month, these are the things that required to be done. Okay, I don't know, preparing the guest list, getting the invitation cards ready, whatever the activities are, right? In the second month, okay, booking the venue, getting the wedding planner, whatever the activity are, you would make sure that you phase it and you do it step by step, so that not so that important event gets materialized or happens in a most smoothest possible way. Okay, another example I'll take. So for most of us, while we were in colleges or while we were in school, your graduation exams or your CA exams or whatever the important exam, those were important events, right? So you used to prepare for it 6 months ahead. So if you have the final exam in December, you would make sure that you complete the all the study material by October, and then keep 2 months for revision, November and December, and then do a mock exam before the main exam, and make sure that the right you are well prepared for the main exam. You don't just appear for the main exam, especially if you feel that exam is an important event for you. Very similarly, this budgeting is one of the most important corporate event in the company's annual calendar. Okay, so think about it now. Think about it now from the company's point of view. That company, from for the company, this budget is like a wedding or like a important exam that they need to make sure that happens properly. Otherwise, it could lead to consequences. Okay, if you don't do this properly, your next year will get affected in a very bad manner. So you have to make sure that you plan for this event right. Okay, so very similar to the exam or very similar to the wedding, you would make sure that you know the exact date when the board or the marriage is happening, or the board review in this case is happening. In this case, the 15th December is every year the board review happens before people go on vacation for the Christmas holidays. You know, 15th December is the date, which is an important date, which is the board review. So now you plan backwards. Okay, you say that we at least need 1 month of buffer between the board review and the CEO and the CFO review. You never know what CFO, CEO, what might want to make changes, or may want to do another round of review if they don't like the budget. Okay, so you usually keep a buffer. So let's say in this example, you're doing it 1 month ahead. Okay, now to do the CFO CEO review, you need to make sure that all the consolidation and the review internally by the FP&A team is done before maybe 2 weeks ahead of time, so that you get 2 weeks time to prepare the presentation for the CEO and the CFO. Okay, now for this to happen in October, you again work backwards, and then you start preparing for the budget, which is what we discussed in the guidelines, and sharing the budget templates, making sure that the departments have the templates before time. They get enough time to provide you inputs. Once they submit the budget inputs, you get enough time to go back to them and ask questions and understand what they have submitted. So all of that can happen 1 month ahead. Okay, and then this what we are discussing right now, which is the planning stage, which can happen again few weeks before that. Okay, so budget guidelines, budget calendar, which is what we are discussing. You start with that, and then you figure out, okay, last time it took me 12 weeks to do the entire process. Okay, so let me plan 12 weeks ahead of time. And in most, I am talking about multi-billion dollar revenue organizations. It is still, in spite of so much of technology and in spite of so much of automation, it is still a 2 month or a 3 month process. And it is also because it is not the only thing that happens during these 3 months, right? So this budget is happening parallelly, but then there are also other important events that might be happening in the company. On the business side, it could be on the finance team side also. For example, at the end of September, if it is a listed organization, there might be quarterly earnings that might take away finance team's bandwidth. Okay, so there could be other things that might, there could be a company offsite somewhere in October where nobody will respond to you in the organization. Everybody is out of is on a different location. So there could be many things that could be happening between August or September and December. So similarly, that could be the case in the exam, right? So if you know that you are preparing for an exam and there is something you need to keep time or you need to keep a buffer, you would plan for it ahead of time. So very similarly, this is how the budget calendar is prepared. Okay, so now we have covered the first phase of the budget, which is the budget cycle, which is the planning stage. We've talked about the two important things that happens during the planning stage. The first one is the budget guidelines, and the second one is the budget calendar. Now, there's one more thing that we will talk about, which is the templates that are shared with the different business teams. I'll share one example of those templates so that you get an idea of how those templates could look like in real life. So let me try to bring. I'll stop sharing my screen for a second, and I'll try to bring one of those templates that I usually use in our. So let me share my screen back again. Okay, so I'm just sharing an example of project that we usually do in our FP&A Professional Institute. Okay, so this is an example of a budget template. I'll show you the blank template, how it looks like, and I'll also show you the completed template. Okay, before I get into the, I need to give you some background about this file so that you understand what is happening. Okay, so this is a sales budget template. Okay, sales budget meaning you're trying to build the revenue budget, and this is a manufacturing company or a product-based company where your key drivers are your price. Okay, price meaning the price of the product, and the volume. Okay, volume meaning the quantity of the product that you will sell. Okay, if you know the pricing and if you know the volume in any product based company, you should be able to prepare the budget. Okay, those are basically your key drivers. Again, right now we're taking example of product based company. It could be a banking company, it could be any company. You have to just identify the key drivers. For example, for a banking company, the key drivers will be your deposit balance, loan balance, and your interest rate. So you have to just identify the key drivers and the relationship, how the revenue is calculated. So in this example, your revenue is calculated is revenue relationship between the drivers is your pricing into the volume. Okay. So now you need two things. You need pricing and you need volume. So pricing, you already have previous year pricing. And then you can sit with the pricing team if you have a pricing team in the company and decide what the pricing should be. And different elements go into the pricing. Okay. It could be pricing of the raw materials. If the raw materials price has changed, you may want to change the pricing of the product. It could be pricing of the labor. Okay, if the labor wages have gone up, gone down, you may want based on the different input costs or based on some other elements, right? It could be just based on demand and supply. If the demand for the product has gone up, irrespective of the cost going up, you may want to still increase the price because the demand has gone up. Same could be the opposite. If the supply is right, if the demand has gone down and a lot of competitors have come up, you may plan to reduce the price irrespective of the, depending on many factors, you would come up with the pricing. Most likely in many companies there is a separate pricing team, especially bigger companies. They would give you the pricing. In mid-sized organization, you would decide the pricing with the CEO and the top senior management. So let's say you've decided the pricing for next year. Now the next step is you figure out the quantity. So now quantity you will have to figure out based on the sales people who are selling the products, right? So let's say in this organization there are it's a small organization with 7 different salespeople as an assumption. Okay, so you will need to know from each of these 7 people what are they going to sell in quantities next year so that you can prepare the budget. Okay, so I'll take one example of one of the salesperson in the organization. Okay, let's call that person Ajay. Okay, so I'll have to extract this part from this file and send this as a template to Ajay and ask Ajay, okay, you had sold these many quantities last year. I've just given you that information from my ERP and from my data. Okay, you can look at it. You've sold. This is your sales performance last year. Now I need you to tell me what do you expect to do in sales in the next coming year for the next coming financial year. Okay, so now it is Ajay's responsibility to estimate and give his best judgment what he is expected to sell in the next year. Okay, and that could be dependent on various factors. Okay, so I'll give you one example. Again, this could be different based on different setup of the organization, different industry. Okay, I'll give you one example. Okay, now in this example, Ajay is managing 4 different clients. Okay, these are the 4 different clients Ajay is managing. Delhi store, Mumbai 1 store, Mumbai 2 store, and then Burger King. Okay, these are the 4 clients Ajay is managing. So if I am Ajay, what I will do? Okay, I will reach out to my partners or whom I have a relationship with who are purchasing from me every year. I'll go to Delhi store and I ask my point of contact who is a procurement manager who is purchasing materials from me. Okay, you have purchased, right? Your company has purchased, I don't know, 450 boxes of ice cream last year. Okay, so based on that, I need to get a good estimate of what is that you're going to order in the next year. And this Delhi procurement manager will give Ajay some hint. Okay, he'll tell you, okay, definitely we'll be expanding this year. We are opening more stores in Delhi, so we'll definitely be ordering more. But I don't know exactly how much more. So what you do, Ajay, is you keep it flat for the first quarter because I know all the stores are going to open after April. So first quarter definitely it'll be same as December. Okay. So Ajay can keep that same as December. And what Ajay will do is he'll keep the January, February, March number same as December. And he'll tell you, okay, there are 2 stores opening. This is the conversation happening between the sales manager and his point of contact as a procurement manager is for one of our customers. Okay. He'll tell you one store is opening in April. So you consider 20% more in April. And then another opens in November. So you consider another 10% increase. Okay. So this could be the kind of conversation Ajay will have with his point of contact in the customer's organization. Okay. Now this will be done by all the salespeople. Okay. Or another example, there could be set contracts with Delhi, right? They have already contracted. They've already given you a contract of these many cases they will purchase. They've already given you a commitment. Irrespective of that, Ajay's responsibility is to give you these numbers. And Ajay's boss's responsibility is to make sure that those numbers are reviewed. So Ajay will also get this reviewed from the sales head. Okay. And then he will submit this template to you. Okay. So now, once all the salespeople will submit the quantities to you, your template, once you consolidate it, will look something like this. And now this you can use to prepare your revenue budget, which will be just the multiplication, your pricing into the quantities, and you will arrive at your revenue budget. Okay, so this is an example of how you share templates and then how people come back. And usually all of this will require time. So you cannot expect people to come back immediately once you submit the templates. So you will share the templates. Then you will have discussions with the teams. There might be some team members who might be in the organization for last, I don't know, 20 years. They might not even need any guidance or support. They will just give you the numbers. They know exactly what needs to be done. But there might be some new team members who just joined in the last 6 months. They have no clue of what to be done with the budget template. So you'll have to give them some guidance, a call with them, and make them understand what needs to be done, and make sure that everybody is on track. So you'll have to have checkpoints in between the time you submit the templates and the time the submission happens. Say, for example, this is 1st of September and this is 30th of September. You cannot just expect automatically submissions will come on 30th September. You'll have to have a check 10th of September. 10th of September, this is a reminder that the submissions are due 30th. All of this, I think you already know as corporate professionals. So you'll have to send multiple reminders, have meetings in between so that people can raise their concerns, doubts if they have any doubts, and so that the submission happens on time whenever that submission templates are due. Because still at the end of the submission, you will still have one or two departments who will be late. Again, you'll have to follow up with them, and then finally you will have the entire budget inputs that you will be able to then consolidate and then review and then go to the next. So this is the entire planning stage. We talked about the execution stage also, by the way. So all of this is execution also. So planning gets over here. All of this template sharing and having meetings and discussions. Department will then submit all of these in the execution phase. So I'll just quickly, okay, this is another way of doing a Gantt chart or doing a timeline of doing the budget calendar. Exactly same as we had seen in the previous slide. Just a different of presenting it. Okay. So we talked about planning stage. We also actually talked about the sharing the budgets, making sure that you meet the respective stakeholders, make sure that you understand the budget guidelines. You have to do a budget guideline presentation to them, tell them, okay, these are the budget guidelines. Okay. Now, once they will understand everything, they will submit the templates. You will get the draft submissions. Okay. And then we already looked at the Excel template example. Okay. Then your execution phase is done. Then you get into the consolidation and the review phase. Okay. Consolidation is fairly straightforward. You just add up all the numbers for different departments. Okay. So if there are two departments, you'll just make sure that all the department numbers are added up together so that the consolidated view is complete and nothing is missing in the consolidated view. Okay. Once the consolidated view is ready, you have to make sure that you thoroughly go through the submissions. Make sure you get all your questions answered. So there will be a lot of questions you will have as a FP&A person, which you need to get clarified, because those questions can come from your CFO also. Those questions can come from the senior management later on when you do the budget presentation. So it is very important for you to completely own those numbers and understand what is happening and be able to explain whatever questions that you could, I would say, anticipate. You should be trying to figure out the reasons or answers for those questions. It could be movement from last year. It could be any variances or any unusual activity that you have noticed. Okay. Any proactive guidance. Sometimes the business teams will forget some events and they may not put the cost of that in the budget, and you have to remind them, okay, last year you did this event in September and we had spent $200,000. You have not put this in budget and are you going to do that event? And yes, we are definitely doing that event. I have missed putting that. Okay, so you'll have to give some proactive guidance based on looking at the historical, based on looking at the past budgets also. Okay, so this is all the budget review. Okay. Once the budget is reviewed, usually as we looked at it, there will be multiple versions of the budget. Okay. Eventually, one version will get finalized, version 20 or version 30, we don't know. Once the budget is finalized, you'll then upload it. If it is already in the tool, then you'll lock it depending on where you're doing the budget. So if it's in Excel, you would upload it into a tool where you can do reporting, or you can do reporting comparison next year. If it's already in the budget tool, then you would lock that scenario. In that cube, you will lock that particular scenario, is what the terminology is, and then you will make sure that nobody changes or touches that, and that becomes the target or the budget for the next year. Okay. So again, quickly, what happens after the execution phase? Now we're at the final phase, which is the review and the consolidation. Consolidation of department budgets, the FPS you do, you will review it as a manager. Make sure you get in all the adjustments that you feel are required or business have missed, and you proactively give them guidance. All the adjustments are done. Then you get it reviewed from your FA lead or the CFO. Get it reviewed from the business lead. If it is a marketing budget, get it reviewed from the marketing head. If it is a revenue budget, get it reviewed from the sales head. Depending on what budget it is, you get it reviewed from the business team or the functional team. Okay. And then finally you get to the last stage, or the second last stage before the board review, which is the CFO and the CEO review. And then finally the board review happens, which is what we saw in that calendar, which was the 15th of December timeline. Okay, so this is the entire calendar, and then the final approval by the board, which we saw that in the planning stage, which is your budget guidelines and the budget calendar. Then you have execution stage, where you start with the guidelines and the calendar, and then you circulate the templates, make sure everything happens smoothly. People are aware of the guidelines. People submit the templates on time. Then you consolidate review. Multiple reviews happen in big organization. In one organization I was a part of, there used to be 4 levels of review. Initially, I used to be at the global level. Okay, so before me reviewing at the global level, there used to be a review at the country level. Okay, once the country level country CFO reviewed it, there used to be a review at the APAC level, which is the regional level. Okay, once the APAC region reviews it, then it used to come to global, which is the consolidation team, and then our team used to review. Usually, in bigger companies, you would have multiple level of reviews, and that's the reason why it takes the entire 2 to 3 months of time, because there are multiple levels of reviews happening during that period. So we talked about the budgeting cycle, the right from the planning stage to consolidation and reviews to execution. Right, we talked about all the phases. Okay, what we cover in our certifications is in-depth step examples, case studies, all the different budgets that you usually prepare, right from revenue budget to your budget, production, inventory. Right, you have different sections of the P&L that you need to budget in all of the most of the organizations. In manufacturing organization, you'll not see production budget, but then you will see some other budget. It will be cost of services, right? It will be the headcount that is the cost of services. So what we cover in our certifications are practical use cases. That one example that you saw, the template that I shared, was from our institute project. Okay, so there are 5 different skills that we have identified after working with CFOs and after speaking to hundreds of CFOs. And these are the 5 important skills: core FP&A concept, financial modeling, data storytelling, business partnering, leveraging AI in finance and FP&A is a new one. So these are 4 or 5 critical skills that if you can cover or if you can build your muscle, you will be most likely be able to do well in your present role if you are in an FP&A role, or if you are looking for an FP&A role. These are the areas where you might get tested in the interview or in the test or during the entire process of screening that happens while you are doing projects. So that is where our CGFP program has been designed. So it is a CPD accredited certification, meaning somebody as a body has audited the program and made sure that it fits the global standards. Okay, so it's a global certification in FP&A, one of the top 5. If you just search in Google top certification, you'll see this in the top 5, top 6 certifications in it. You learn directly from FP&A leaders. 10 comprehensive modules, which I'll talk about in a bit. Experiential sessions, as I mentioned, it'll be case study based. You'll be given a lot of assignments. A lot of pre-reading material will be there, which you have to go through before you come to the class, and where we'll do the case studies, which is more of an executive style MBA. If you've experienced that in any executive MBA program, you come to the class prepared, looking at the pre-reading materials, videos, and then you are participating in the class, so that your experience of learning is translated into your what you can directly apply into your roles. Part of Global Alumni Network. For till now, as I had mentioned, we have trained more than 4,500 students, and about 1,000 students in these 2 certifications. 100 of them have taken the CDFP or are undergoing the CDFP certification, and 1,000 of them have taken the other beginner level certification, which is the FP&A masterclass. So we have a community of about more than 1,000 FP&A or want to be FP&A professors, and then you can become a part of that community. You also get, as a part of the CDFP, you get a personalized session with one of our career coach, and then they will help you with your resume. They'll help you with your interview preparation. There is placement support, meaning we help you with your resume, we help you with your case, your interviews. Also, we have now started tie-ups with recruiters and have a jobs board or a job portal, which is called FP&A Professionals, sorry, FP&Ajobs.com, which is in testing. So that will launch in the next couple of weeks. And once we have that, we will be aggressively be tying up with organizations which are recruiting for FP&A, and we'll do our best to give you the best opportunity. Again, I'll not say we can give you a guarantee of placement. What we can do is, if there is an opportunity on our jobs portal, and if your skills and if your experience matches that opportunity, we'll do our best to make sure that you get an interview. That is what we are trying at the new project that we are launching in FP&Ajobs.com. Okay. Access to monthly Q&As. There is a one session where we bring in experts, speakers, where you can learn from CFOs, you can learn from people who spent 20 years in FP&A or 10 years in FP&A in different industries. Okay. All of the past sessions that have happened in the last 2 years. So we have done these sessions, guest sessions continuously over the last 2 years. So there is a good library of 24 recorded sessions that you could go through. There are some reviews that we have done. There are some CFOs that have shared their experience. There are some FP&A leaders that have shared their, all of that is available for you to rewatch based on the topic. If you find that interesting, you can just go and watch that as an archive. And you have the online material access, which is the LMS that we have. So that is a little bit about the CDFP program. The 10 modules, I'll not go into the detail. Budgeting, forecasting, we discussed the budgeting cycle in detail as a theoretical presentation. But how do you do that practically using a case study of a real life looking company where you implement all of those steps using Excel file or using the Excel templates? So all of that is covered in the budgeting forecasting module. All the concepts that we discussed briefly, the incremental budgeting, different methods of budgeting, all of that is covered. How do you do different types of budget that I showed, right from revenue budget to cost of goods sold budget to SG&A budget to CapEx budget, all of that is covered. AI for finance and FP&A, a very new module which keeps getting evolved as we go. I mean, it keeps getting changed. So here, what we try to do is bring in very specific tools which are going to help you improve your productivity, which are going to do something that you were earlier taking a lot of time. Now you could automate it, you could do it faster. So all of our case studies focus on making sure that you become more productive. You try to leverage AI to the best extent possible, keeping in mind the limitations that you have on the security and the data sharing constraints. You make sure that you take care of that, and then you use AI for your best. Management reporting, we talked about variance analysis, profitability analysis, different management reports, examples, case studies, all of that is covered. Financial modeling, very specifically for FP&A, is covered in the financial modeling module. We talk about scenario planning, sensitivity analysis, building revenue models, doing cash flow forecasting, doing capital budgeting. These are some of the topics that I can share on top of my mind. Okay, so this is what the core FP&A module is: budgeting, forecasting, management reporting, financial modeling. And then you have data analytics, where we introduce you to a couple of tools that are getting popular in FP&A roles. One is a visualization tool, Power BI, and the other one is a programming language, which is SQL. Okay, so again, we don't want you to become experts in programming here. What our objective is, you can use basic understanding of Power BI to be able to create your first dashboard. You be able to understand basics of SQL, so that now that we have AI tools available, you could use AI tools and you don't even have to write SQL code. Even if you understand just the ABCs and the basics of SQL, you can get the code, or you can create the code, or you can read the code from the storytelling presentation. So Dhawal covers this. My co-founder covered this topic in detail using different frameworks, different practical examples. Strategy for FP&A. How does FP&A team relate to the strategy? What can FP&A team do to contribute to the company strategy? Different frameworks are covered, different examples, case studies are covered. And then finally, business partnering, which is more of interaction and how do you interact with your cross-functional teams which are outside of finance. All of that is covered in this module. So overall 10 modules, which is taught over a period of 6 months, 24 weeks, 24 live sessions every Saturday. And the eligibility criteria is you need to either have a bachelor's degree or a professional qualification like CPA, CA, CMA. So that is the minimum criteria for the CGFP program. And you get the certification once you attend 50% live sessions and you complete the capstone project, which is a part of the CGFP program. And then there is a exam which you need to undergo, which is a 2-hour examination, which is a multiple choice examination. And so if you do those 3 things, you get awarded the CGFP certificate. Okay. So
Hello, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, what if I have a Master of Commerce, not a
Yeah. So masters is the minimum required. Definitely above the bachelor's, so definitely you are eligible. So bachelor's is the minimum required. Masters.
Thank you.
Okay. So the fee is 1695 euros. It's a live interactive 6-month program where we have more than 5 faculties who would be coming and teaching you. So including me and my co-founder Dhawal, there are other faculties who are experts in their topics, be it Power BI, be it SQL, be it AI. So there are external faculties who would be coming and taking respective modules. However, majority of the syllabus will be covered by me or Dhawal, who is the co-founder. And the next cohort is a 6th cohort, which is starting 6th cohort, meaning we have already done 3 cohorts have completed. 4th cohort is almost nearing its end. 5th cohort has just started. This is a 6th cohort we'll be starting on 6th of September, and you'll meet every Saturday for 2 hours. What is required from you is weekly commitment of 3 to 4 hours, which includes your 2 hours of Saturday classes. So you need to set aside 2 hours on every Saturday, and apart from that during the week, so that you can go through the pre-reading material or any preparation material or any assignments that are a part of the next week's session. Okay. What you have seen, right? Now we have done this program for over 2 years, and we have completed 3 batches and 2 more batches are in progress. What you have seen is people who make that habit of learning every week, right? Every Saturday they commit 2 hours. Those are the people who usually are ahead in terms of getting the whatever the next promotion or getting a new opportunities because they are spending and investing in their learning. So irrespective of you do this program or not, what I would recommend you to do is set aside. It is very easy not to do this. So set aside 2 hours every week and do some sort of upskilling. Doesn't have to be our program. It can be any other program. You can do self-paced programs. You can do any other programs, but make sure that you invest. What the CDFPA does is it automates that process. Now you have signed up for this program. Now, because you have paid $1,500 or $1,600, you are now committed and you become very serious for the next 6 months. And that is what the CDFPA process, what we have seen from our past experience. Okay. Again, you get access to the live sessions. If you miss any session by any chance, you can watch the recorded session, catch up on the recordings, and come prepared for the next session. So that is a little bit about the CDFP program. I think the date is this is the previous cohort date. So let me change that. So this was the cohort 5. Okay, no, this is the right date for the first application. So usually we have 2 or 3 rounds of applications, and the first round of application closes 31st July. And if you feel that this is the right program for you, you can consider enrolling or applying for it. Okay, let me share that in my chat box. So I'm just sharing the CDFP program link. You could go through the brochure, you can go through the program details, and then you can apply based on whatever if you feel that is the right program for you. I talked about the other program, which is the FP&A masterclass. If you feel that CDFPA is a lot of commitment and if you're not ready for it and you are at a beginner level, you're just exploring FP&A and not sure if this could be the long-term career for you, or if you're still preparing for interviews, you're not yet decided that FP&A is going to be your long-term career, then you could go for the FP&A masterclass, which is an intermediate level program which covers 4 of the 10 modules. So it covers budgeting, forecasting, management reporting, data storytelling, and business partnering. However, the examples, case studies, all of the materials are at an intermediate level. So you will see that the CDFPA will have significantly advanced case studies and example compared to the FP&A masterclass, which is very deliberate. We have kept that for the beginners or people who are new to FP&A. So you could consider that also. That is also there on our website. You could check that program. Unfortunately, we don't have any live FP&A masterclass happening in the next 1 month, which we usually do once a quarter, but right now, the next batch is not yet scheduled. It might happen somewhere in Q4. So you can keep an eye if you want to join the live cohort of FP&A Masterclass. However, we have made it available in a recorded format, and you could anyways join the recorded version if you want to do that. Okay. So that is what I wanted to share. What I'll do is for people who want to join the recorded format, I saw a couple of comments on scholarship. So I don't see any right. I don't know right now about the CDFPA scholarship. So what I would suggest for CDFPA, even if you are interested and if you're looking for scholarship, then you apply or you fill the application form based on your application. If there is a scholarship slot that opens up, usually we have 5 scholarship slots in a batch of 25, and there's a wait list for that. So if there is a scholarship slot that opens up, we will definitely reach out to you. Okay, so you can apply for the program and then wait for us to come back to you. For the FP&A Masterclass, what I can do is I can give you a 50% discount on the price that you usually find on the website. So if you go for, if you were anyways planning to go for the FP&A Masterclass, you could take that 50% discount advantage. So I'll share this link also in the chat box. And this is for the recorded program. And you could use the coupon code, which is budget50, which is specifically for the next 24 hours. It'll expire after 24 hours. And you could take the benefit of FP&A Masterclass at a 50% discount. So if you wanted to join the intermediate level program, you can do that. Okay, so that is what I wanted to share. What I'll do right now, I will go back to the questions as I promised. So let me take a look at the chat box and I'll take a look at the questions that we have not covered so far. Okay, so I'll stop sharing my screen. Okay, anyways not sharing my screen, right? Okay. So let me go back to all the questions that we want to resume. Okay, so I'll just go and scroll through my chat. Yeah, so is FP&A masterclass starting now? So I already answered that. So we don't have any scheduled for this quarter, meaning till end of September. Usually we have once a quarter. So the next one might be in Q4. Whenever it happens, we will reach out to you. Since you have joined our webinar, you must be also be receiving our weekly newsletters and will also be receiving our weekly emails. So you will figure out. We'll definitely let you know ahead of time whenever you open the next live FP&A master. Okay, let me see if there are more questions. Should we select a type of budgeting on account? For example, payroll, we can do incremental budgeting. Yes, I have seen that happen. Okay, again, you have to be very careful and be ready with the reason why you do that. So you could do that. You could do budgeting for one particular expense in a different way and other expense in a different way. Is this coupon for all courses? No, this code is only for the FP&A masterclass, and that too for the recorded version. Okay, so this code is only for the FP&A masterclass. Okay, I think I have covered all the questions, and we are also on time. Just 2-3 minutes away from the 9:30 time that I've committed to close the session by. So I'll wait for maybe one last question or last questions. And if not, then we will close the session or we will meet again in the next webinar. Okay. Also, I wanted to share a lot of people have shared positive reviews. So you could reach out to any of our alumni who have taken the CDFP program. If you feel that you need to talk to somebody, a lot of people have completed the program. So I think by now, more than 60 people have completed the cohort 1, 2, 3 have already been completed, and other 40 people or 45 people are going. So you could reach out if you want to reach out. You can fill up the form. Our program manager will contact you. You can ask 5 different people you can speak to who have taken the program. Also, you could reach out on LinkedIn based on the certification they have said. You could search on LinkedIn and you can independently do your research and ask people who have completed the CDFP program. They must have shared the certificate on their LinkedIn profile about the program before you enroll. That you should definitely do. Okay, live and recorded. So I did not understand the question. If live or recorded, we will connect again in one of our future webinars. So we do the webinar every week, and we'll stay connected. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you in one of our future sessions. Thanks. Bye.